2 years ago, we had never heard of Ewing sarcoma. What we thought was a stress fracture from a sports injury turned out to be every parent's worst nightmare.
The result that came back was critical. They said that there was a huge tumor in her leg that had spread and that she had cancer and that it was Ewing sarcoma. The second sucker punch that came was when they laid out her treatment protocol. And we learned that it was over 40 years old.
Ifosfamide, 1987. Doxorubicin, otherwise known as the Red Devil, 1974. Vincristine, 1961. Etoposide, 1983. And cyclophosphamide, 1959.
The prognosis for Ewing sarcoma has been the same really since the advent of chemotherapy. For kids with one tumor, otherwise known as localized disease, the survival rate is 80%. For kids with metastatic disease, it's far worse at only 20%.
Our son Gus was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma in November of 2018. Of course, launched directly into treatment after that. He went through the standard protocol of 14 rounds of chemotherapy. We're so fortunate to receive the NED. No evidence of disease. Watching him battle through that treatment was horrifying, and watching him battle through a relapse is kind of what keeps us up at night. Of the entire federal budget for cancer research, only 4% is allocated for children. And there are close to 100 types of cancer specific to children. The other 96% goes toward fine-tuning treatments for adult cancers that in many cases already have a much higher cure rate and a less archaic treatment approach. There's been so much advancement in the cancer industry as a whole, and treatment for adults has progressed so much that I had assumed, naively that had carried over to pediatric cancers as well, and the truth is that it absolutely hasn't.
The treatment is brutal. Most adults couldn't survive the pediatric protocol that these kids go through. And 95% of kids are going to have a significant health event by the time they're 40 years old. Heart damage, nerve damage, organ failures, and that's not from the cancer, but from the toxicity of the medicine that we're pouring into their bloodstream to treat it.
That's how it is for Ewing sarcoma patients. There is no protocol. There are limited clinical trials. It's terrifying.
In spite of all this, Little Warrior Foundation was founded on gumption and hope.
Ewing sarcoma is driven by a single gene that most oncologists theorize that if we could stop that gene, we could stop this disease dead in its tracks.
So Ewing sarcoma is specifically characterized by an abnormal joining of two genes that don't normally belong together. Most commonly, that's a gene called EWSR1 and FLY1.
The rate-limiting step is really a lack of funding.
What families and foundations allow the field to do, and folks like us, who are researching the cures do, is sort of take a fast-track, high-risk, high-reward approach. And I cannot emphasize that enough.
Partnerships like we have developed with the Little Warrior Foundation allow us to run clinical trials that we otherwise would not be able to run. And while we can't ensure success of every effort we embark on, if we don't test as many drugs as we possibly can that we think have the chance to be promising, we never have the chance to identify one that can make our treatments better.
We're locking arms with the top research institutions across the country and pushing them to create better options for these kids. No parent should have to bury their child because of a cancer that is curable. We firmly believe that, and it's why we started the Little Warrior Foundation with the sole purpose of finding and funding a cure for Ewing sarcoma.
The answers are out there. They are. We need to tap into them further and move faster.
thank you for your support as we push toward a less toxic and a permanent cure. Not just for Lucy, for Gus, but for all the little warriors in this fight. The ones who have earned their wings and the ones who have yet to be diagnosed. Their battle is our battle now. Thank you for joining the fight. Swords up.